Commander Zexhai floated in the dark silence of space, trapped inside a metal coffin that was slowly killing him. The escape pod's walls pressed close around his scaled body, and every breath came harder than the last. Red warning lights blinked at him from the control panel, telling him what he already knew. He was going to die out here. 3 days ago, he had been standing on the bridge of the Stellar Dawn, watching his crew prepare for battle. The Korth Empire ships had appeared without warning, their black hulls cutting through space like predators, hunting prey. The battle had been fierce but short. The Korth had better weapons, better shields, and no mercy. One by one, the Confederation ships had exploded into clouds of metal and fire. Zexhai remembered the moment when his own ship's hull cracked open like an egg. The emergency alarms screamed as atmosphere rushed out into the void. His crew had run to the escape pods following the training they had practiced 1,000 times. He had been the last to leave, making sure everyone else got out first. That was what commanders did. They saved their people, even when it meant they might not save themselves. Now, he was alone. The other pods had stopped sending signals hours ago. Their power had run out, or their life support had failed, or maybe the people inside had just given up. Zexhai did not blame them. The Velthari were warriors, but even warriors knew when a fight was lost. His own pod was not much better. The life support system wheezed and clicked as it tried to keep him alive. The oxygen gauge showed 12% and falling. The heat had stopped working and cold was creeping into his bones. His stomach ached from hunger, but the food supplies had been damaged in the escape. Everything tasted like metal and despair. The worst part was the silence. Space was supposed to be quiet, but Zexhai had never noticed before. On his ship, there had always been sounds. Engines humming, computers beeping, crew members talking and laughing. Now there was nothing but his own breathing and the slow tick of dying machinery. He had sent out distress signals for 3 days straight. The emergency beacon pulsed every few seconds, crying out into the emptiness. But this sector of space was empty. No colonies, no trade routes, no patrol ships. The nearest Confederation base was weeks away, and they had bigger problems than one lost commander. The war with the Korth was going badly. Every ship and every soldier was needed elsewhere. Zexhai pulled up the star charts on his failing computer. The screen flickered and sparked, but he could still see the map. They were in the middle of nowhere, floating in a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen bodies. Even if someone wanted to rescue him, they would never think to look here. This place had no name, no value, no reason for anyone to visit. He thought about his family back on Veltar Prime. His mate Sira would be waiting for news. His children would ask why Daddy had not come home. The military would tell them he died with honor, fighting for the Confederation. They would give Sira a medal and a pension, and maybe name a street after him someday. It was better than some fates, but it felt hollow now. The pod shuddered and another warning light came on. The navigation system was failing too. Soon he would be drifting blind, unable to even know where he was. The irony made him laugh, though the sound came out as more of a wheeze. He was a starship commander who had traveled to 100 worlds, and now he could not even tell which way was up. Zexhai closed his eyes and tried to remember better times. The academy, where he had learned to be a soldier. His first command, a small patrol ship that had seemed like the most important vessel in the fleet. The day he met Sira, and the way she had smiled when he told her about the stars. The birth of his children and how they had looked at him like he could protect them from anything. Maybe he had protected them in a way. The Stellar Dawn had died, but they had hurt the Korth ships too. Every enemy vessel they destroyed was one less threat to the worlds behind them. His crew had fought well, and their sacrifice had meant something. It was not victory, but it was honor. The oxygen alarm started beeping faster. 9% now, maybe 2 hours left, if he was lucky. Zexhai reached for the communications panel and began recording his final message. His voice was weak but steady. This is Commander Zexhai of the Confederation Navy. If anyone finds this recording, know that we fought well. The crew of the Stellar Dawn died as warriors, defending our people from the Korth invasion. Tell our families that we faced the void, without fear, and our spirits will watch over them from the eternal stars. He paused, trying to think of something else to say, something wise or inspiring, the kind of words that commanders were supposed to leave behind. But his mind felt foggy, and breathing was getting harder. In the end, he just said what was in his heart. I wish I could have seen home one more time. ZXHY closed the recording and leaned back in his seat. The pod felt even smaller now, like a tomb closing around him. He had done everything he could. Now all that was left was to wait for the end with dignity. That was when the proximity sensor started beeping. At first he thought it was another malfunction. The pod systems had been failing all day, but the beeping was steady and strong, and the sensor screen showed something impossible. A ship was approaching, moving fast through the debris field. It was not a Korth vessel or a Confederation rescue ship. The computer could not identify it at all. ZXHY stared at the screen, hardly daring to believe what he was seeing. After 3 days of silence and death, something was coming toward him through the dark. He did not know what it was, or if it would help him. But for the first time since the battle, he felt something other than despair. He felt hope. Jake Morrison was drinking coffee and reading salvage reports when the proximity alarm went off. The bridge of the Lucky Strike was small and cramped, filled with jury-rigged equipment and the smell of recycled air. Jake liked it that way. Big. Ships meant big crews, and big crews meant politics. He preferred to keep things simple. "Captain, I'm getting some weird readings from Sector 7, called Sam Torres from the navigation station. She was young, maybe 25, with short black hair and quick hands that danced over her controls. Looks like there was a battle here recently. Lots of debris and some of it still warm." Jake set down his coffee mug and walked over to look at Sam's screen. The display showed a cloud of twisted metal spreading across several thousand kilometers. Ship parts, weapons fragments, and what looked like the remains of at least 6 vessels floated in the dark. It was a scavenger's dream, the kind of find that could pay for fuel and food for months. "Any idea who was fighting?" Jake asked. "Negative, sir. The computer doesn't recognize the ship designs, but I'm picking up some energy signatures that look like escape pods." Sam's voice got more excited. "And a few of them still have life signs." Jake rubbed his jaw. Most species had rescue protocols. If there were survivors floating out here, their own people should have come for them by now. Either they were too far from help, or nobody cared enough to look. Both possibilities made him uncomfortable. "How long since the battle?" he asked. "Based on the debris spread and heat signatures, maybe 3 days. Whatever happened here, it was nasty." Lisa Hayes looked up from her engineering station. She was older than Sam, with graying brown hair and oil stains on her jumpsuit. She had been working on the salvage arm motors all morning, and her hands were black with grease. "If there are survivors, they won't last much longer," Lisa said. 3 days in an escape pod means their life support is nearly gone. We need to move fast if we're going to help them." Bobby Clark spoke up from the medical station. He was the ship's doctor, a thin man with gentle eyes and steady hands. His medical bay was tiny, barely big enough for one patient, but he had saved more lives than Jake could count. "I can treat most humanoid species with what we have," Bobby said. "But if there's something exotic, I might need to get creative." "Do we know what we're dealing with?" Sam shook her head. "The pod designs are completely unknown, could be anyone." Jake stared at the screen, thinking. The Lucky Strike was a salvage ship, not a rescue vessel. They had limited supplies, limited space, and limited time. If they stopped to help these survivors, they would use up resources they might need later. It was not good business. On the other hand, Jake had been in bad spots before. He knew what it felt like to be alone and desperate, waiting for help that might never come. His crew knew it too. They were all outcasts in their own way, people who had found each other when nobody else wanted them. "Sam, set course for the nearest pod with life signs. Lisa, get the salvage bay ready to receive survivors. Bobby, prep the medical bay for unknown species treatment." Jake sat back down in his captain's chair. "We're going to do the decent thing." Aye, Captain," Sam said, already plotting their course. The Lucky Strike turned toward the debris field, her engines humming with quiet power. They reached the first pod 20 minutes later. It was a strange design, angular and covered with what looked like scales. The metal was pitted and scarred, and several systems were sparking and failing. Through the small viewport, Jake could see a figure inside. "Life signs are weak but stable," Bobby reported. "Looks like some kind of reptilian species, big guy, maybe 7 feet tall." "Can we dock with it?" Jake asked. Lisa ran her scanner over the pod. "The docking collar is a non-standard design, but I can rig something. Give me 10 minutes. While Lisa worked, Jake studied the figure in the pod. The alien wore what looked like a military uniform, dark blue with silver markings. Even unconscious, he looked dignified somehow, like a soldier who had seen too much war but never given up fighting. "Got it," Lisa announced. "Docking collar is attached and sealed. Atmosphere is compatible, mostly nitrogen-oxygen. We can bring him aboard." Jake and Bobby put on their emergency suits and cycled through the airlock. The inside of the pod was cramped and filled with acrid smoke. Warning lights flashed red, and the life support system made grinding noises that did not sound healthy. The alien was unconscious, but breathing. His skin was covered in fine scales that shifted from green to brown, and he had a pronounced ridge running down the center of his skull. He was bigger than a human with broad shoulders and long limbs, but he looked fragile somehow, like he had been stretched too thin. "Help me get him out of here," Bobby said, checking the alien's pulse with a handheld scanner. "His vitals are all over the place, but he's alive." They carefully lifted the alien out of his pod and carried him to the Lucky Strike's medical bay. Bobby immediately went to work, connecting monitors and setting up an IV drip. The alien's biology was different from human, but not so different that Bobby could not help him. "Will he make it?" Jake asked. "I think so. He's dehydrated and suffering from oxygen deprivation, but nothing I can't fix. The bigger question is what we do when he wakes up. We don't know if his people are friendly or hostile." Jake watched the alien's chest rise and fall under the medical bay's bright lights. The uniform suggested military, which could mean trouble, but the alien had been left to die in a pod, abandoned by his own side. That suggested he might be grateful for rescue, regardless of who provided it. "We treat him like a guest until he gives us reason to do otherwise," Jake decided. "How many other pods are out there?" Sam's voice came over the intercom. "I count 4 more with life signs, Captain, but they're scattered across the debris field, and some of them are in bad shape." Jake nodded. "Then we better get moving. Bobby, keep our guests stable." Lisa prepped the cargo bay for more survivors. Sam plot a course to the next pod. As the Lucky Strike moved through the wreckage, Jake wondered what they were getting themselves into. Rescuing unknown aliens from a mysterious battle was not exactly standard salvage procedure. But something about the dignity of that sleeping figure made him feel like they were doing the right thing. Besides, everyone deserved a chance to go home. HFY woke up to the sound of unfamiliar voices speaking in a language he had never heard before. His head felt heavy, and his mouth tasted like metal. But he was breathing clean air for the first time in days. The surface beneath him was soft, much softer than the hard seat of his escape pod. He opened his eyes slowly, expecting to see the cramped interior of his pod, or maybe the sterile white walls of a Confederation medical bay. Instead, he found himself in a small room with curved walls and dim lighting. Medical equipment hummed quietly around him, but the designs were completely unknown. This was not a Velthari ship, and it certainly was not Korth. A human face appeared above him, pale and concerned. The creature had brown hair streaked with gray and wore a simple blue uniform. HFY had never seen anything like it before. The being was smaller than most spacefaring species, with soft features and no visible weapons or armor. It looked almost fragile. "Easy there, big guy," the human said in accented but understandable galactic standard. "You're safe now. My name is Bobby Clark, and I'm a doctor. You've been unconscious for about 6 hours. HFY tried to sit up, but his body felt weak and unsteady. Bobby gently pressed him back down with surprisingly strong hands. "Where am I?" HFY asked, his voice coming out as a rough whisper. "You're aboard the Lucky Strike, a salvage vessel. We found you floating in an escape pod and brought you aboard." Your life support was about to fail completely. Zexai's mind raced. A salvage ship meant civilians, not military. But what species were these beings? Their ship was unknown, their language unfamiliar, and their appearance unlike anything in the Confederation databases. "What species are you?" he asked. Bobby smiled, showing small white teeth. "We're humans, and you are?" "Commander Zexai of the Velthari Confederation Navy." The words came out automatically, along with the formal surrender protocol he had been trained to use. "I yield myself as prisoner of war and request treatment according to the Galactic Conventions." Bobby looked confused. "Prisoner?" Nobody said anything about prisoners. "You're a guest here, Commander. We just pulled you out of a bad situation." Before Zexai could respond, another human entered the medical bay. This one was taller with short blonde hair and captain's stripes on his uniform. He carried a steaming cup in his hands and moved with the easy confidence of someone used to command. "Glad to see you're awake," the human said. "I'm Jake Morrison, captain of this vessel. How are you feeling?" Zexai studied the human captain carefully. Jake looked young for a commander, maybe 40 standard years, with laugh lines around his eyes and a relaxed posture. Nothing about him suggested the rigid discipline Zexai expected from military officers. "I am functional," Zexai replied cautiously. "Captain Morrison, I must ask what you intend to do with me and my surviving crew members." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Do with you? We plan to patch you up, feed you a decent meal, and help you contact your people. What did you think we were going to do?" The casual attitude puzzled Zexai. In his experience, unknown ships meant either allies or enemies. There was no middle ground in wartime. Yet these humans seemed to treat his rescue as a simple matter of basic decency. "Are humans allied with the Confederation?" Zexai asked. "Never heard of them," Jake admitted. "We're pretty new to this whole galactic community thing. Most species haven't heard of us either." "Then why did you rescue me?" Jake shrugged. "Because you needed help. Nobody deserves to die alone in the black, especially not when we could do something about it." The simple answer stunned Zexai. In Confederation space, rescue operations were calculated based on strategic value, available resources, and military necessity. Personal feelings rarely entered the equation. The idea of risking lives and resources for complete strangers was almost incomprehensible. "What do you want in return?" Zexai asked. "Nothing," Jake said, then paused. "Well, maybe you could tell us what happened out there. We found the remains of a pretty big battle, and it might help us avoid whoever did that to your ships." Before Zexai could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. Jake's relaxed expression instantly became alert and focused. He touched a communication device on his collar. "Sam, report." A female voice crackled through the comm. "Captain, we've got company. Long-range sensors show multiple ships approaching fast. The computer identifies them as the same type that fought the battle here." Zexai felt his blood turn cold. "Korth," he whispered. "What?" Jake asked. "The Korth Empire. They were the ones who destroyed my fleet. If they are returning, it means they detected your ship." Zexai struggled to sit up despite Bobby's protests. "Captain Morrison, you must leave immediately. The Korth do not take prisoners, and they consider mercy a weakness. They will destroy your ship and everyone aboard." Jake's expression hardened. "How many ships are we talking about?" "I count 12 vessels," Sam's voice reported. "All military configuration, and they're moving to surround us." Zexai watched Jake's face, expecting to see panic or fear. Instead, the human captain looked thoughtful, like he was working through a difficult problem. It was not the reaction Zexai had expected. "Options?" Jake asked over the comm. "We could run," came another voice, probably the engineer. "But they're faster than us, and they've got us boxed in pretty tight." "We could try hiding in the debris field," Sam suggested. "Lots of interference from all the wreckage." Jake nodded slowly. "Good thinking. Lisa, can you rig some charges from the mining equipment? If we're going to play hide and seek, we might need some distractions." "Already on it, Captain." Zexai stared at the humans in amazement. Faced with impossible odds against a superior enemy, they were not surrendering or begging for mercy. They were planning to fight back using whatever tools they had available. It was either very brave or very stupid. "Captain Morrison," Zexai said urgently, "you do not understand. The Korth are a military empire with advanced weapons and trained warriors. Your salvage ship cannot hope to defeat them in battle." Jake looked at him with a slight smile. "Commander, you're probably right. But here's the thing about humans. We don't always do the smart thing. Sometimes we do the right thing instead." He turned toward the door, then paused. "Bobby, get our guest and the other survivors secured. This might get bumpy." As Jake left to take command of his ship, Zexai realized he was witnessing something he had never seen before. These humans were about to risk their lives to protect strangers from a species they had never encountered, against enemies they could not possibly defeat. It made no strategic sense whatsoever, and somehow that made it the most honorable thing Zexai had ever witnessed. The Lucky Strike shook as the first Korth energy blasts hit her shields. Jake gripped his captain's chair and watched the tactical display as 12 enemy ships moved to surround them. The Korth vessels were sleek and black, built for war, while his ship was a converted mining vessel held together with spare parts and hope. "Shields at 60%, Lisa called out from engineering. "Those hits packed a punch, but we're still in one piece." Jake nodded and opened a channel to the medical. "Bobby, how are our passengers?" "Secured and stable, Captain. The Velthari commander wants to talk to you." "Put him through." Zexai's voice came over the intercom, strained but determined. "Captain Morrison, you must abandon us and save your crew. The Korth will not stop until we are all dead. There is no honor in throwing away lives for prisoners." "You're not prisoners," Jake replied firmly. "You're guests, and humans don't abandon guests." Another barrage hit the ship, stronger this time. The lights flickered and sparks flew from damaged consoles. Sam wrestled with the navigation controls, using the debris field as cover while Lisa's explosive charges created false targets and confusion. "This is insane," Zexai said over the comm. "Your species has no stake in this conflict. Why are you risking everything for strangers?" Jake thought about the question as he watched the Korth ships closing in. It was a fair point. The smart thing would be to surrender or flee, to let the galaxy's problems sort themselves out. But Jake had never been particularly smart about these things. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said simply. The Lucky Strike dived behind, a large piece of wreckage, using it as a shield. Lisa's charges detonated in sequence, creating a wall of fire and metal that confused the Korth sensors. For a moment, they had breathing room. "Captain," Sam said, studying her displays, "I'm picking up something strange from the Korth fleet. Their formation is breaking up. Some of the ships are pulling back." Jake frowned. "Why would they do that?" Zexai's voice came back on the comm, filled with amazement. "Captain, I am monitoring their communications. The Korth commanders are arguing among themselves. They have never seen tactics like yours before. Some of them think you are using Velthari survivors as bait for a trap." "Are we?" Jake asked with a slight grin. "In a sense, yes, but not the way they think." The Lucky Strike's sensors showed 3 Korth ships advancing while the others held back. Jake saw an opportunity and took it. "Sam, micro-jump us to grid 77. Lisa, prepare the mining charges for manual detonation." "Got it, Captain." The ship vanished in a flash of light and reappeared behind the advancing Korth vessels. Lisa triggered the charges, sending chunks of debris flying into the enemy formation. One Korth ship took a direct hit and spiraled away, its engines trailing fire. "Impossible," came a growling voice over the open channel. "What manner of warriors? Are these humans?" Jake keyed his communicator to broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Lucky Strike. We're not warriors. We're salvage operators who happened to find some people who needed help." There was silence for a long moment. Then the same Korth voice replied, "You fight to defend aliens that are not your species. This is not logical." "Maybe not," Jake admitted, "but it's what we do." The tactical display showed the Korth ships reforming, but their attack pattern was different now, more cautious, more confused. They had been expecting standard military tactics, not the improvised guerrilla warfare of a desperate salvage crew. "Captain," Zexhai said over the comm, "may I suggest something? I'm listening." "The Korth respect strength and courage above all else. They have never encountered a species that fights to protect others without personal gain. This confuses them. Perhaps we can use that confusion." Jake raised an eyebrow. "What did you have in mind?" "Challenge them to single combat. It is an ancient Korth tradition, one they have not seen honored in many years. If you can defeat their champion, they will be bound by honor to withdraw. And if I lose, then we all die. But we die with honor, which is more than the Korth usually allow." Jake considered the proposal. It was risky, probably suicidal, but it might be their only chance. The Lucky Strike could not survive much longer against the Korth fleet, and running was no longer an option. "Patch me through to the Korth commander," Jake said. Moments later, a harsh voice filled the bridge. "This is War Leader Thakmor of the Korth Empire. Surrender now and your deaths will be swift. This is Captain Morrison. I challenge you to single combat. Champion against champion. Winner takes all. Do the Korth still have honor, or have you forgotten your own traditions?" The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Jake could hear his crew holding their breath, waiting for the response that would determine their fate. Finally, Thakmor spoke again, his voice filled with something that might have been respect. "It has been many cycles since anyone dared invoke the old ways. Very well, human, choose your champion and meet us on the asteroid designated as neutral ground. If your champion falls, all survivors become our prisoners. If ours falls, or if yours falls, you withdraw and leave us in peace." Jake finished. "Agreed. You have 1 hour to prepare." The channel closed, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Sam looked at Jake with worried eyes. "Captain, who's going to be our champion?" Jake stood up and checked his sidearm. "I am." "Sir, that's suicide," Lisa protested. "The Korth are bigger, stronger, and they've been bred for warfare." "Maybe," Jake said. "But I've got something they don't expect." "What's that?" Bobby asked over the comm. Jake smiled grimly as he headed for the armory. "I'm too stubborn to quit." As the Lucky Strike moved toward the asteroid, Zexhai found himself filled with emotions he had never experienced before. These humans were about to risk everything for people they barely knew, people from a species they had never heard of until today. In all his years of military service, Zexhai had never seen courage like this. Not the calculated bravery of soldiers following orders, but the pure, simple courage of people who refuse to abandon others in need. Whatever happened in the next hour, Zexhai knew he would never forget the day he learned what it meant to be human. The asteroid was cold and airless, a chunk of rock floating in the darkness between the two fleets. Jake stood on its surface in his environmental suit, watching the Korth champion emerge from his landing craft. The alien was massive, nearly 8 feet tall and covered in thick armor that gleamed like black metal. Cybernetic implants glowed red along his arms and spine, and his movements spoke of deadly training. Jake checked his own equipment one last time. Standard human combat gear, a plasma rifle, and a gravity belt to help him move in the asteroid's weak pull. He looked small and fragile compared to his opponent, but he had faced worse odds before. "I am Krextar, champion of the Korth Empire," the alien announced, his voice booming across the comm channel. "I have killed warriors from 17 different species. You will be the 18th. "Jake Morrison, salvage captain," Jake replied calmly. "I've survived 3 ship explosions, 2 pirate attacks, and my ex-wife's cooking. Let's get this over with." The Korth champion paused, confused by Jake's casual tone. Most beings showed fear or anger before battle. This human seemed almost bored. "You mock me," Krextar growled. "Not really, just trying to keep things light." They faced each other across 50 meters of rocky ground. The rules were simple. Weapons allowed, no outside interference, fight until one could no longer continue. Jake could see both fleets watching from orbit, waiting to see which species would claim victory. "Begin," came War Leader Thakmor's voice, over the comm. Krextar moved first, raising his massive energy cannon and firing a blast that could have destroyed a small building. Jake was already rolling behind a boulder when the shot hit, sending rock fragments flying in all directions. The Korth champion advanced steadily, firing shot after shot with mechanical precision. Each blast carved chunks out of Jake's cover, slowly wearing it away. Jake waited, counting shots and studying his opponent's movements. When Krextar paused to check his weapon's charge, Jake made his move. He sprinted from cover, zigzagging, across the uneven ground as energy blasts sizzled past his head. The low gravity helped him move faster than the heavy Korth expected. Jake's plasma rifle barked twice, hitting Krextar's armor and leaving glowing scorch marks, but doing no real damage. The champion laughed and swung his massive fist, missing Jake by inches as the human ducked and rolled away. "You are fast, little human, but you cannot hurt me. Surrender now, and I will make your death quick." Jake didn't answer. He was too busy studying the asteroid's surface, looking for something he could use. The rock was ancient and unstable, with deep cracks running through its core. An idea began to form in his mind. He fired his rifle again, not at Krextar, but at the ground near the champion's feet. The plasma bolt carved into the rock, following one of the natural cracks. Krextar stumbled slightly as the surface shifted beneath him. "Missed again?" the Korth taunted. "Did I?" Jake asked. He fired 3 more shots in quick succession, each one targeting a different crack in the asteroid's surface. The rock began to groan and shift as the natural stress points weakened. Krextar looked around nervously as small pieces of debris started floating away. "What are you doing?" the champion demanded. "Physics," Jake replied, and fired his final shot directly into the largest crack. The asteroid shuddered and split along its fault lines. The section where Krextar stood broke away from the main body, spinning slowly into space. The Korth champions, heavy armor designed for strength rather than mobility, became a liability in the shifting gravity field. Jake used his gravity belt to anchor himself to the stable part of the asteroid while Krextar flailed helplessly, trying to reach solid ground. The champion's energy cannon was useless now. Any shot powerful enough to reach Jake would destabilize his own piece of rock even further. "Impossible," Krextar snarled. "You fight without honor. A true warrior would face me directly." Jake pulled out his sidearm, a simple projectile weapon, and aimed it carefully. Honor doesn't mean being stupid. It means protecting the people who trust you. The bullet struck Krextar's weapon, shattering its power core. The explosion sent the Korth champion tumbling end over end into the void, his armor's thrusters unable to compensate for the blast. Jake activated his suit's emergency beacon and waited. Within minutes, a Korth rescue pod arrived to collect their defeated champion. Krextar was alive but helpless, floating unconscious in his damaged armor. The comm channel crackled with war leader Thakmor's voice. "The human has won. By the ancient laws, we withdraw." But Jake wasn't finished. He opened a channel to the entire Korth fleet. "Wait, I want to return your champion." Silence filled the comm channel. Finally, Thakmor spoke again, his voice filled with confusion. "Return him? He has been defeated. His life is forfeit according to our laws." "Not according to ours," Jake said firmly. "Among humans, we don't kill defeated enemies. We help them." Jake guided the rescue pod toward the Korth fleet, using his suit's limited thrusters. It was a slow journey, but he made sure Krextar reached his own people safely. When the pod docked with the Korth flagship, Thakmor himself came on the comm. "Human Captain Morrison, you have shown mercy to a defeated enemy. This is unprecedented. Why do you spare him?" "Because that's what civilized people do," Jake replied. "We fight when we have to, but we don't kill when we don't have to." The Korth fleet began to withdraw as promised, but several ships lingered. Over the next hour, Jake received more communications from Korth commanders than he knew what to do with. They asked questions about human philosophy, human tactics, human values. Some seemed angry, others confused, but all seemed affected by what they had witnessed. Back aboard the Lucky Strike, HFY stood in the observation lounge watching the last Korth ships disappear into hyperspace. Jake found him there an hour later staring out at the stars. "Commander, how are you feeling?" Jake asked. Changed, Zexai replied quietly. In all my years of military service, I have never seen anything like what happened today. You defeated an enemy through cleverness rather than force, then showed mercy when you could have claimed vengeance. Jake shrugged. Just seemed like the right thing to do. That is exactly what I mean, Zexai said, turning to face the human captain. Most species would have calculated the strategic value, weighed the risks and benefits. You simply did what felt right. What will you do now? Jake asked. Zexai was quiet for a long moment. I will return to Confederation space, but not to resume my old duties. What I have learned here must be shared. The galaxy needs to know about humanity, about your way of thinking. Think it will make a difference? I believe it already has, Zexai replied, gesturing toward the space where the Korth fleet had been. Some of those ships left with questions they never had before, seeds of doubt about their own methods. That is how change begins, one mind at a time. 3 months later, reports began filtering through the galactic networks about strange incidents in Korth space. Ships sparing defeated enemies, commanders showing mercy to prisoners. Some called it weakness, others called it evolution. But in the cargo bay of the Lucky Strike, now heading toward human space with a full load of valuable salvage, Jake Morrison was just glad to be alive. He had no idea that his simple act of decency had started something that would reshape the galaxy. After all, that's what humans did. They helped people, they did the right thing, and they never left anyone behind, even when it seemed impossible.